Okay. Your husband was beating you like this, and the police didn't take it seriously. Why weren't they performing their duties as one might expect? What happened?
I don't know, and I'm for real. This isn't the first time a situation like this done happened. It's the second time. The first time it happened was a while back. It was with my daughter, but I wasn't here, and it was in 2010. And we had this other officer that came from a different town. I can't remember his name, but he was like he was the canine cop. You know, that's what we called him because he carried the dog. And so my daughter was beat up by her boyfriend. And my mom and my aunt went to her apartment, and they found her. When she opened the door, she was, like, all bloody and stuff. And so my mom stood there, and the rest of the officer was there because my mom told me. And the canine officer told them, he said, y'all supposed to be taking pictures of all this. He said, this is a domestic violence case. And so they did all that and everything. Well, they took that guy to justice because of the canine cop. Well, the canine cop left. So anyway, on my story, it was like May the 4th. I just got off of work, and my husband picked me up. I worked in Plainview. So we was on our way home to Floydada, and we got into town, and, you know, the laws was out and everything. So he went over to one of his relatives' house, and they was watching that game that night because I remember it, but I wouldn't get out. And I told him, I said, I'm not getting out. And he said, well, I said, I'm not getting out. I said, this is not my type of stuff. I said, I don't drink. I don't do none of that. I said, you know that. I said, so I'm not going to get out, so I'm just going to sit in the car. And I informed him. This is what I told my husband. I said, do not speed because, you know, when we came in, the laws was out. Well, he had like he didn't want to listen to me. So he was speeding. He was doing 40 and a 35, according to the officer, because the officer pulled us over into Lowe's, the only store we have here in town, off the highway. And I got out and got me a soda. And the officer was, you know, talking to him and everything and asking for insurance and all that stuff. And I told him, I said, you sitting up in here, I said, you got this open container in this car. And he said, oh, well. So he moved it to the back. Well, the officer came back and he asked him, he said, well, what happened to the open container that was sitting here in the front seat? And then he just looked at, the officer. And then one thing, you know, led to the next. He never did cuss him or anything like that. So the officer asked him if he had a license. He told him no. He said, well, you can't drive because you don't have no license. He said, so she needs to drive. So we switched spots. So the officer went and done whatever, and then he came back and he said, well, I'm going to issue you a citation for speeding. He said, because you was doing 40 and a 35. And he said, oh, man. Then he asked, he said, well, have you had anything to drink? You know he done had something to drink. You see the container sitting in the car. And it's open, you know. So he said, well, okay. So he wrote him a ticket. Then after that, we went to his auntie and uncle's house down the street. So I get out to go in the house, but I didn't get to go in the house because he yelling, screaming, and cussing. He started kicking me and all this and told me to get back.
Let me back up. So when the officer asked him if he'd been drinking, how did he answer? Did he say yes or no?
He told him yes.
Okay. And the open container was in the back. Was it still in the car, but the officer did not write him a ticket for that?
Right.
Okay. And what police department is this?
This is the Floydada Police Department.
Florina? Where is that located?
No, it's Floydada, Floydada. We're like 50 miles from Lubbock, Texas. It's a small little country town.
Okay. You said Florida? Can you spell it for me?
Floydada. Floy. D-A-D-A.
D-A-D-A. Got it. Floydada. Okay. And this officer otherwise was professional, but then afterward your husband started beating you up?
No, he wasn't professional when my husband started beating me up. Because then after that, before that happened, we went, like I say, then he made me get in the car. We got in the car. So he went to the police department, wanted to speak to the officer. And the lady told him that the officer wasn't in right now, but she'll dispatch him later on or whatever, that he needed to go on and all this. And I'm telling him, I said, well, won't you just...
I'm a little lost. Let me just get where we left off so I understand where you're going. After this incident where the officer wrote him the ticket, you guys went home. That's where you were before.
We went to a different house. We went to his aunt and uncle's house.
Okay, after that traffic stop, you then went to an aunt or uncle's house. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now tell me what happened when you got there and how it relates to what the officer did.
Okay, we got there, and then we get out the car, and my husband's still upset and mad. and he wanted to go talk to the police officer. So we went to the police station. Well, the lady told him the officer wasn't there right now, that she would dispatch him later. And so we went back to the aunt and uncle's house. The officer came by to talk to him, but he didn't get out. And so we was all sitting in there, me, the aunt, and the uncle, and he went out on the porch talking to the officer, yelling at the officer, screaming at the officer and everything. So the officer just left. Okay, then after this is when my husband came back. He would go outside, raise the motor up on the car and all this and all that. Then he come back in. He was like, let's go. And I'm like, I'm not going nowhere. I said, we don't have no gas, we have no money, and I'm not leaving my son. So he gets mad, and he slaps me. And I told him, I said, don't start this. I said, please don't do this. And then he just kept on and kept on. So one thing led to the next. So he just literally started just beating me. I mean, he was like he was a vicious animal, and I was his prey. He was just like dragging me all over that house and everything. And then I looked up, and I thought he was going to because he went in the kitchen, and I thought he was going to get a knife, but he didn't. He came back out with this big old skillet. And he was just whacking me in my back with it, And he yanked out the cord from his aunt's phone. So his aunt went somewhere and called the police. I don't know if she called 911 or if she just called straight to the police department or what. But this same officer came to the scene. And all he did was just stand in the door, and I'm laying there on the floor telling him, I can't breathe. And he was like, well, ma'am, it's okay. I just called EMS. They'll be here in a minute. Just hold on. It's okay. I called EMS. They'll be here in a minute. And the whole time he just stood at that door. He didn't come ask me what happened. He didn't take no questions or nothing about this. And then he went outside, and I don't know what he did outside or nothing. And then I know he didn't contain to put my husband in handcuffs because my husband came back and he kneeled right down beside me on the floor, and he was trying to put his arms around me, and I said, don't touch me. I said, I'm in so much pain. And he said, well, if you tell him anything, I swear I'm gonna hurt you. I'm gonna kill you. And I'm like, man, I said, I'm in so much pain. So then the EMS finally arrived. And the EMS dude, he kneeled down beside me, and he said, ma'am, are you okay? And I said, not really. I said, I can't breathe. And he said, okay. He said, just bear with me. He said, we're going to put oxygen on you. And I said, okay. And he said, can you tell me what happened? And I told him, I said, he beat me. And then the EMS man got up, and he went outside. And I guess he went and talked to the officer because the officer was outside. And then all of a sudden, the whole EMS came in, and they started putting me on the little yellow board. And then they loaded me up on the stretcher and wrapped this thing around my neck, and they was putting me in the ambulance. And then my husband was coming beating on the door, yelling at them, saying, that's my wife, let me in. And then the EMS dude told him, he said, well, sir, we're going to transfer her to the hospital. We're going to take her to Lotney. And I just like, oh, my God. And I told that man, I said, please don't take me to Lotney. And he said, you're really scared. And I said, yeah. I said, I am truly scared. He said, you want to go?
This is a hospital that you didn't want to go to, and why didn't you want to go there?
Because they told him where they was taking me to. And I didn't know if the officer was going to arrest him or what. And I didn't want him to know where I was going.
Okay. So did he follow you to the hospital, your husband?
Okay. So anyway, we on our way to Plainview because the EMS told the lady that was driving. He said we're going to change our route. He said she wants to go to Plainview. So she dispatched and let them know we was headed towards Plainview. Well, on the way to Plainview, an accident happened. And my heart just like tightened up. And I just took a deep breath. And then the lady that was back there, she said she knew where it happened at. And I asked her, did it happen towards Matador? And she said no. And I said, well, okay, then I felt relieved because I knew it wasn't him. So I said, well, okay, then they arrested him. See, that's what I thought. Well, when we got to the hospital, the EMS dude, the same one that I informed that my husband beat me, he was puzzled and wanted to know who was in that wreck. So he called before they left the hospital to see what was going on. And I could hear him, but I couldn't hear the other person on the phone. And he called and he was asking him, he said, I'm just curious about this accident that y'all just got called on. He said, I'm just worried about it. And he said, so who was involved in it? And I don't know what they told him. And then he said, what? And they said it again. And he said, no, this can't be right. He said, I don't know what's going to happen. He said, because this was a domestic violence case. He said that man should have been arrested instead of leaving the scene. So I'm assuming...
So hold on. You're jumping over something. Are you trying to tell me that your husband was involved in an accident on the way to come and get you at the other hospital?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm assuming.
Okay, so he had an accident. Somebody must have told him where you were going to this new hospital. He was racing over...
No, because, nobody knew I was going to Plainview. But, see, going to Lotney is like going to Plainview.
Okay,
see,
so let me stop. I want to stop because we're running way over stuff we don't need to get into. Let me ask you a question. Are you telling me that when you were at the hospital about to be treated or heading to the hospital, he had a traffic collision chasing you down trying to find you?
Yes.
Okay, and that is because the police did not arrest him, did not take a report, did not collect any evidence?
Right.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Let me just ask you a few more questions. Is your complaint that you were not provided with an investigation when you should have been and that the police officer didn't do his job? Is that your complaint?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how did you get our number? Did you call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or how did you get our number?
No, I just Googled. You know,
okay.
I talked to a lawyer about this, and he told me that it was nothing that I could do.
Oh, well, I don't know if that's true. Maybe he means that you can't sue the police over it, but you can certainly
I'm not trying to sue the police over it. I mean, it's just that to me it seems like they really don't know which guidelines and steps to follow within the law.
Okay, so let me talk to you about the severity of the injuries and the beating. You were beaten with a skillet, is that right?
Mhm.
And how many times did he hit you, and where did he strike you?
He struck me right in the middle of my back.
How many times did he?
At least about 5 or 10.
Okay, were there red marks or any sort of bruising on your back?
Yes, sir.
Okay, were there other witnesses that saw the beating?
Yes.
Okay, and did the family members that called in to get the police there, they witnessed it? Did they speak to the police?
I think his aunt did.
Okay. If I talked to her, would she be willing to tell me the same story you're telling me now?
Probably, I don't know.
Okay. And what is her name, the aunt who saw the whole incident?
Dorothy Wickware.
Okay, Dorothy Whitworth?
Dorothy Wickware, Wickware.
Okay, got it. All right, so now, last question I have for you. You filled out a complaint form on our website, and obviously you want the complaint reported. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to contact the chief of police. Let me confirm that that's what you want. Do you want the officer to be reported for misconduct?
Yes.
Okay. That'll be done within the hour. And
okay, and I got a question. There's something else. Because, after my husband's wreck, 3 or 4 days later, the officer came to the hospital.
To see your husband?
No.
Or to see you?
Yes.
How long were you in the hospital?
My husband was in the hospital from May the 5th to May the 22nd. Then he was transferred to a long-term care facility.
No, actually, I thought you were in the hospital. Were you in the hospital?
No, I was only in the hospital for I was released about 7 or 8 o'clock that morning, but he didn't come to the hospital to see me.
Uh-huh. Well, let me go on. So back to what happened to your husband. So the accident that he had, that he was driving again with no license after he had been stopped already, he was then injured severely enough to be placed in the hospital for over a month?
Yeah, almost nearly a month.
Okay. And what were his injuries?
My husband was thrown from the vehicle. He is quadriplegic. He has been on life support, vent support. He has fractures in his hands. He has head injuries.
He's now quadriplegic
mm-hmm.
after the accident?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the accident?
Mm-hmm.
So he lost his ability to walk because of that accident?
Right. He can't walk, talk, or nothing right now. He can't do for himself or nothing. He can't eat. He's on a feeding tube and everything.